So today's topic is shape poems. You can use any shape you can think of to write a shape poem. It's a good idea to start with a simple shape. These two are fun, but rather hard to do. Okay. Toothpaste twirls and twists as it telescopically tumbles from the tube. This one. Slippery, slimy slugs and snails slide along on silvery trails. Oh, that one rhymes. Trails and snails, it rhymes. Okay. Well, telescopically means tiny. Yeah, because it's telescopic, you need a telescope to see it, so it's very small to your eye. Okay. And as mentioned before, the silvery trail, that comes from the fact that the trail that goes behind the snail, the slime that the snail leaves, is shiny and might look like silver. Okay, so let's move on to some of the questions. What letter does most of the words in the poem begin with? So we're talking about the toothpaste one. Can you remember what the letter is? What is it? Anyone? T, yes, it's the letter T. If you see here, we have toothpaste 1, twirls 2, twists 3, telescopically 4, tumbles 5, and tube 6. So 6 words beginning with the letter T. Yeah, it doesn't make the same sound though. Yeah, I know it does begin with the letter T, but that's the sound, so it doesn't really count. So he uses the letter T because he can think of lots of words to, as you said, describe the toothpaste which begin with the letter T. Yeah? So that's why he chose that one. And what is he describing? Right, and what letter does toothpaste begin with? T. So it makes a lot of sense for him to choose the letter T. What is the poem describing? So what is it describing? Toothpaste, okay, as a whole, but more specifically, what exactly is it describing? Great, yes, how the toothpaste comes out of the tube. Yeah, he's not just describing a tube of toothpaste, he's describing how it comes out. That's, of course, much more interesting than if you'd just written about the packet. If you'd just written about this, it wouldn't make a very interesting shape poem. Firstly, it's not a very exciting shape, but also it's not a very interesting poem. Yeah. So he's writing about how the toothpaste comes out of the toothpaste tube. What is the shape of the poem? Yeah, it's twirly, it's got curves in it. Okay, yeah. So the idea is the shape is the same as the toothpaste coming out of the tube. Yeah, it's not, if you'd done it as a rectangle, it wouldn't be very convincing as toothpaste coming out of a tube. But if you, I don't know, you probably haven't squeezed toothpaste that much, but you can imagine if you kept squeezing the toothpaste, it would come out like this. Okay. So it is in the shape of toothpaste coming out of the tube. It's curvy, it's got twirls in it and twists, much like how the poem describes. Right, on to the next poem, which is Snails. What letter does most of the words in the poem begin with? S, right, yeah. And why do you think the poet chose that letter? Well, they're describing a snail, yeah. So the snail is the title of the poem and it begins with S. But on top of that, I think there's lots of good words that begin with S that describe how the snail moves and the trail that it leaves behind, yeah? Okay, or describing the slimy trail that it has, okay, behind it. So there's lots of good words with S for that poem topic, okay? So 2 reasons, just like with the toothpaste, the title of the poem, which is Snails, and secondly, there's lots of good words beginning with S that describe how the snail moves. What is the poem describing? How the snail moves along and the silvery trail, the slime, the trail that the snail leaves behind it, okay? So, what is the shape of the poem? So which shape has the poet chosen? He hasn't written it on the snail. Where have they written it? What have they written it on? Good, on the shell, thanks. The poet chose not to do it on the snail. Why did the poet not write this poem on the snail? Exactly, it's not a very interesting shape for a shape poem. Yeah, so when you're doing a shape poem, you don't just need to consider the words that you're writing, you need to consider the shape that it will make on the page. This is a much more interesting shape. And you see, even though he's not really writing about a snail's shell, it makes more sense for him to do this shape, or it looks a lot better for him to do it in this shape. So snails have shells, or a lot of snails have shells, so he used a shell as his shape here. The shape of the writing sort of goes with what the poem is about, yeah? So there's two things there. We have, it's called alliteration, when the first letter of a few words are the same, or the sound is the same, yeah? That's called alliteration. And then the actual shape of the poem represents the item that it's talking about. Okay, so number one, what letter does most of the words in the poem begin with? What is the letter? T, right, so here you just do a T. Why do you think the poet chose that letter? Because the poem, there's not much space, but maybe we go over, is about toothpaste. I think that's enough. We don't need to explain that toothpaste begins with T, I don't think, anyway. And then on top of that, it could be as well that he could find lots of words which began with T, yeah? Lots of suitable words that, I said he, it might be a she, the poet could, so there's no space here, the poet could find, this is something you will need to think about when you do your shape poems. The poet could find lots of good, I want to say descriptive words. Maybe that's good enough, descriptive words. Descriptive words. Beginning with, oh no, T, okay. What is the poem describing? About how toothpaste comes out of the tube. So it describes how toothpaste comes out of the tube. Out of, oh, now I'm running out of space, out of the tube, okay. Yeah, you'll find you don't have enough space as well. Just do your best, or maybe write it on the line below. What is the shape of the poem? Yeah, it's twirly toothpaste. Twirly toothpaste. You can say twirly, or maybe you've got some other words. Twirly toothpaste. Maybe you say it looks like how toothpaste exits the tube. What letter does most of the words in the poem begin with? S, right? S. Why do you think the poet chose that letter? Talking about slugs and snails. I can put snails here. I can say, also, there are lots of S words which describe snail's trail. You know, that funny silvery slime that they leave behind them. Yeah, so it's got slippery, slimy, silvery, and then also the way the snail moves, it slides. What is the poem describing? The movement of snails and their trails. Trails. Okay, so it describes the movement of snails and their trails. Okay, what is the shape of the poem? Now this is a bit different to the toothpaste one. What's the shape of the poem? Snail's shell. It's in the shape of a snail's shell. And this is despite the fact it is not about a snail's shell. It is about the snail itself. It's just that we discussed this before, that the shell makes a more interesting shape than if he was to do it in the shape of a slug. Well, that's not such an interesting shape. Okay, so we started with a ladder. And you can see here we came up with the words tall, long, giant, straight, high, dangerous, wood, metal, steps, bones, fall, stand. Okay, dangerous giant, so tall, if you climb, you might fall. Steps of wood, upright he stood. Okay, that's what we came up with. One thing that there is missing is the alliteration. But I don't know, is there a particular letter that you think would go with ladder? Because the problem with the word ladder is there aren't too many words. Well, there's long, but I can't really think of any other word beginning with L to describe a ladder. Can you? Many others. But yeah, as you can see, we didn't do alliteration with this poem. That's all right. If you really struggled, you don't have to do alliteration. Yeah. Now, with the ghost, we did. We came up with S words. Yeah. Scary, strange, spooky, spooks, saucy, silently. Yeah. They're all words that we connect to the word, to the ghost. Yeah. Again, we didn't use G. We could have used G for ghost, but we couldn't think of many words that began with G. So we chose S instead. And our poem was, I saw a strange thing, spooky and silent. It saw me, scared and spooked. Supernatural is the word I was looking for. Oh, that would be a good word for our word bank, supernatural. Okay, so yeah, you will need to decide what letter to begin with. And of course, with snake, we chose S. There's plenty of words that begin with S, which describe a snake, how it moves. It's scary, it's scaly, slithery, hissing. We chose hissing, even though strictly speaking it's not alliteration. It does have a strong S sound in it. Somebody else mentioned venomous as well, which would work. Snake, slippery, and slide. Yeah, and I haven't written out the poem because I can't do it. If you handwrite it, you can. You can write it in the snake. The shape poems don't really need to be that long. As you can see, they're about the length of the sentence, really. Okay, there's, I don't know, here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 words. So around 20 words, slightly under 20 words, should be enough to do your shape poem.